Well, hello and welcome to the DCL podcast. I'm your host, Steve Creasy, inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, your podcast for Disney Cruise Line history, trip reports, and general travel planning. Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast. I'd like to thank you, as always, for coming back and taking a listen. We are on to episode 9, almost into double digits here, and excited to finally break that next hurdle. But tonight, we are going to go back across the Atlantic and talk to our good friends, the Towlers. John and I had a chance to sit down a couple days ago and go over his family's travel planning for their upcoming trip to Northern Europe on the Disney Magic this coming May. And I am pretty excited to bring this to you because this is a cruise that is definitely on our family's bucket list. It's definitely one of the more exciting places in the world to travel around, especially in the summer months, traveling through the Baltic to some just amazing capitals and countries such as Finland, Estonia, Russia, Sweden, and then, of course, she leaves out of Copenhagen, Denmark. So just some amazing countries that they're going to be able to experience as they travel on the Disney Magic this coming May. Before we jump into tonight's show, just a couple things that kind of stuck out with me. Obviously, a lot of you, I'm sure, have already heard that the Disney Fantasy is going to get a quick makeover here this spring. They are going to bring to the Oceaneers Lab and Disney Oceaneers Lab and Club. They're going to do a little remake, offering some Star Wars experiences and then also some Marvel experiences. In addition, it looks like they're going to close down the last of the arcades on the ship, and they are going to bring kind of similar to what they have on the Dream, Vanellope's Sweet Shop. They're going to change that to Sweet on You Ice Cream Shop, which is an ice cream shop that offers all different kinds of ice creams and homemade chocolates, truffles, and this, of course, is at an additional charge. It's not free, it's not the free ice cream that you normally get up on the deck. I haven't experienced it yet, but like on a long sail, it seems like a place that might be kind of fun to stop into on a sea day. Also, for those of you inclined, they're going to have a new shop. It sounds like it might be down where the duty-free shop is now. They're going to bring Tiffany's, so if you are inclined to indulge yourself or your significant other with some nice jewelry from Tiffany's, you're going to have that opportunity to do it as well. Besides the remake of the Fantasy, though, the article that kind of caught my eye was, for the first time in forever, can I use that? That's probably been overused a little bit too much. The Disney Wonder is going to be stopping at a new port on its some of its sailings up to Alaska this year, and some of the select 7 nights and on the 9 night, they're going to stop at the port of Icy Strait. And I saw that last year when the itineraries came out, when I was kind of looking at Alaska. I'm always kind of intrigued since we live up this way to see where the Wonder's going. And I saw that they were going into the port of Icy Strait, but I really didn't know much about it until I read the article on the Parks blog this week. So I did a little research, and I'm just going to read you this from Cruise Critic to kind of explain what Icy Strait is. It's a creation of Alaska's newest cruise port. Icy Strait represents a win-win collaboration between local communities and the giant cruise corporations that make big profits from visitors eager to experience America's last wilderness. The facility is just down the road from Hoonah, Alaska's largest Hoonah Tlingit village, and 22 miles southeast of Glacier Bay National Park. It has been a lifeline for a community in crisis, providing a much-needed alternative source of income for locals afflicted by a downturn in the traditional businesses of fishing and logging. And this podcast is a little bit too short to be able to go into that, but fishing and logging in Alaska is something, fishing can be big money for those of us who go up there and do it for fun, but for those who are trying to make a living out of it, it is definitely an industry that has been in decline, along with logging over the, over the last several decades, in all honesty, up here in the Northwest and on into Alaska. Millions of dollars have been invested into creating this facility that offers cruise travelers an authentic wilderness experience and a refreshingly non-commercialized alternative to the usual run of Juneau, Ketchikan, Skagway, and Sitka. So for the first time, the Wonder is going to be stopping in here. The port's been open for a couple years. The one cool thing about it is they limit it to 1 ship per day, so you won't have some of the crowds that you can get in Juneau when there's 2 and sometimes even 3 ships parked there during the summer. So that's kind of a neat thing. Also, just kind of looking at it, it's got the Disney Port Adventure site has. It's kind of got your typical adventures that you can do: kayaking, whale watching, some hikes. There's a zip line there and whatnot. But the thing that kind of fascinates me is you can actually walk into the town and see how, rather than seeing a little bit over commercialized city like some of the other stops in Alaska are, you can actually see how some of the local indigenous people live there. So look forward to maybe hearing somebody's experience as they stop in Icy Strait this year. So with that being said, let's jump into tonight's episode, as I'm happy to and excited to bring you all about John and his family's pre-travel planning for Northern Europe. And now I'd like to introduce back to the show, John Towler. How are you doing today, John?
I'm really good, thanks, Steve.
Hey, thanks for coming back. And today I'm pretty excited to talk to you because you and your family are getting to do a cruise that I don't think a lot of people get to do, and that is up to Northern Europe. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right. That's absolutely correct. So at the end of May, we head off to Copenhagen and start that cruise.
Perfect. And just, I guess before we jump into it, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself again? We met John and his family when we were cruising in Norway last May, and did a show. Actually, this is the second show we did with you, right, John, on your cruise and our cruise to Norway?
Yeah, I think it's episode 2 in your list.
Episode 2, and we're all the way on to episode 8 now, so it's just growing leaps and bounds. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, John, and tell everybody where you're from again.
So, my name is I'm John Towler. Obviously, from my accent, people will be able to tell that I'm British. So I live in the UK, in England, in Nottinghamshire, which is right in the middle of England, right by Sherwood Forest, which is Robin Hood country.
Perfect.
And as you said, Steve, our families met on a cruise to Norway in May 2016. I have a wife who's called Caroline and 2 boys who are 10 and 7, although the 10-year-old would be very upset if I didn't say that it was his 11th birthday in a couple of days' time.
And he's going to be 11
a couple of days' time.
Yeah, in a couple of days' time before you go on the cruise. So
Yeah, that's right.
Pretty excited about that. Okay, so cool. What made you pick, or what made you guys think about going back on a Disney cruise, first of all?
Okay, so when we talked about the cruise to Norway in episode 2, anybody who listened to that will pick up how much we loved that cruise. We had an absolutely great time. We thought Disney did a great job, and Norway was very beautiful. So we decided as a family, pretty much straight after that cruise, that we'd like to do another one, and that we'd like to go with Disney again, and we'd like to do something in 2017. I guess just as an aside, we already knew when we were on that Norway cruise that we were having a great time. So what we really should have done is we should have gone to the future cruise sales desk and put a placeholder down while we were on that cruise to say that we wanted to probably go on another cruise with Disney. And I guess lots of people will know there's some big advantages of that. If you do that, it's in time.
Yeah. Sorry, I keep talking on it. Why don't you go over because I think you understand that even better than I do as far as the future placeholder goes.
So if you put a placeholder down while you're on a cruise, that entitles you to a 10% discount off your next cruise. It reduces the deposit percentage that you have to put down, and you also get a couple of $100 of onboard credit for that next cruise. So we didn't do that. So that's obviously a mistake. That's cost us a few $100 not to do that. And the commitment that you make by putting the placeholder down is minimal. It costs you $250 to do it, but that $250 is refundable if then you decide you don't want to do another Disney cruise. So actually, in reality, it's not costing you anything. And you have 24 months to convert that placeholder into another cruise, so to actually make another booking. So that's a pretty generous scheme that Disney run to encourage you to book another cruise while you're on board with them. So we didn't do that, which was a bit of a mistake.
And we could talk about this a little bit later as far as future bookings as well too. But that's a good thing to note as far as if you think you're planning on doing a cruise, or if you have any inkling, if you don't know the cruise you want to do, that's a great way to kind of secure it and get a little bit of a reduction in price in the future. But unfortunately, you guys didn't do it, but that's okay. What cruise did you decide, and why did you decide the cruise that you picked?
So when we got back to the UK, we took a look at the 2017 Disney European schedule. I think we decided we wanted to stay in Europe for our second cruise. And we saw that Disney offered a 7-day cruise around the Baltic, again on the Disney Magic, which is the same ship we went to Norway on. And that's a cruise that leaves out of Copenhagen and visits Tallinn, St. Petersburg, Helsinki, and Stockholm. And we can talk a little bit more about those destinations later on in this podcast. But that sounded like a really interesting and varied itinerary. So we booked up. We booked up for the same cabin level as we booked when we were in Norway. So that's a deluxe family ocean view stateroom with veranda. We're on deck 8 again, and the cruise leaves on May the 28th.
Awesome. Did you get the same room, just out of curiosity?
No, we're not in the same room. I think we're 10 cabins further forward, something like that.
Okay. I remember because it was like right next to one of the suites, the Royal Disney suite or the Walt Disney. Did you get a chance to look in there by any chance when you were walking by, or did you even notice?
I think we did look in one day when the door was open. Yeah, we took a sneaky little peek through the door. Yeah. But no, we're not in one of those. No, we're not. That's not us.
But still, that's a pretty nice cabin with a veranda. And why did you pick one with a veranda, I guess?
Well, I've many years ago, I took a ferry, just a regular passenger ferry, from Stockholm to Helsinki. And as many people know, Stockholm is a city that's built on a lot of islands. And actually, when you sail out of Stockholm, you have to weave your way in and out of those islands on a very narrow channel. And it feels like you could actually reach out off the side of the boat and touch the islands, touch the houses on the islands, you shake hands with the people. It was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. So I was very keen that as we were going to be sailing in and out of Stockholm again, that we would have somewhere that we could sit and just take in those sights. And there's a couple of other days where actually we're either sailing into a port or sailing out of a port during daylight hours, early morning or late afternoon. So to have the opportunity to have a veranda just to sit out and look at the sights, that's a big benefit, I think, if that's something that's within your financial reach.
Oh, definitely. And from my understanding, too, each one of the ports of call that you go to, and we'll go through them here in just a second, I believe that the kind of like in Norway, the ship docks right downtown, so you've got some pretty amazing views of the cities that you're at as well. Is that correct?
In Sweden, it does. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. What we're hoping to do, and I'll go over this at the beginning too, is to kind of give an overview of how you guys planned your cruise and what you're hoping to get out of it. And why don't we just start off with how are you planning to get to Copenhagen, where it leaves from?
Okay, so Copenhagen is the capital city of Denmark, as many people know. So we're just taking a regular flight. It's a couple of hours flight from the UK, so not too far. And we decided that it made sense. The cruise leaves on a Sunday, but it's always a bit of a risk, I guess. I think you've talked about this in one of your other podcasts. It's always a bit of a risk to fly into somewhere on the same day as the cruise leaves. If you have a delay, that could all become a bit of a stressful situation. So that's something we decided we didn't want to do. So we're flying out one day early on the Saturday. Takes away the stress, and of course, it gives us some time to look around Copenhagen. It's not a city I know at all. It's not a country I've been to. So we wanted to take the opportunity to do that.
Perfect.
Yeah, go on, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, okay, so are you leaving in the morning? So you've got pretty much the whole day once you get to Copenhagen, or?
Well, the idea was, to fly out of the UK. It's reasonably early in the morning. Get to Copenhagen around lunchtime. You lose an hour, so Copenhagen's 1 hour ahead of the time in the UK. And then flying back, we were due to leave Copenhagen around lunchtime, get back to the UK early afternoon. But I don't know whether this is the same in the US. But actually, European airports generally only confirm their flight slots, their guaranteed flight slots, about 3 months in advance of a flight actually happening. And what happened to us is we got an email from the airline a couple of weeks ago now to say that on our return flight back from Copenhagen, they were changing the slot. And instead of us having a very convenient lunchtime flight, gets back early afternoon, allows us to drive home, get back early evening, they moved it to an evening slot. So now we're going to get off the Magic, after breakfast on that final morning with all our luggage. We're then going to have a whole day in Copenhagen. We're going to have to find somewhere to dump our luggage, and then we don't actually land back in the UK until 11 o'clock in the evening. and then we then have a 2.5 hour drive home. So that's not something we can do anything about. These things happen. But I guess if you're traveling in and out of Europe and you're not familiar with that, it's just something you might want to bear in mind.
That's a good.
Is it the same in the US?
I think it's a little bit more. I know that the European airspace is a little bit tighter than the US as far as slot times, and I don't think that we necessarily have the same problems traveling around the US. But you're right, as far as traveling overseas, a lot of times if you book your flight more than 3 months out, which a lot of people do, a lot of times that flight time will change, and I guess that has to do with the slots that they have that they're getting once they whatever European city they're flying into has been changed. So in the U.S. not so much, but I've definitely seen it. That happened last time when we went to London. Actually, they changed our flight by 2 hours, so we ended up getting to London 2 hours later than what we were originally planned to when we went on our cruise to Norway with you. So yeah, definitely something to think about. I guess it can happen to you. So, do you have any plans then? I guess, or any ideas?
So, in reality, we're going to have half a day in Copenhagen, something like that, before the cruise departs, and then we're going to have a whole day in Copenhagen once we come back before we fly out. So, no specific plans at this point. I haven't done a huge amount of research yet, but we'll probably visit the Tivoli Gardens amusement park, which claims to be the second oldest amusement park in the world, and that's near the hotel we're staying in on the day before the cruise leaves. And we'll also probably take a walk down to the Nyhavn area, which is the 17th century waterfront area of Copenhagen. Lots of brightly coloured townhouses, lots of old ships moored up there. The famous mermaid statue is there, and lots of restaurants and places to eat. So we'll probably take in that sort of thing on our time in Copenhagen.
Okay, perfect. Hey, so something I was thinking about, for people that might be taking a cruise out of Copenhagen, such as yourselves, how are you getting from your hotel to the ship that next day?
That's a really good question, and I'd love to give you a definitive answer, but the answer is I don't really know. But I don't think it's very difficult. I think where the Magic sails from is only about a 15-minute drive, 10-15-minute drive from the centre of Copenhagen.
Okay.
So we'll probably just end up jumping in a taxi.
Okay.
And heading on down. But there's no big travelling, and then to travel from Copenhagen Airport into Copenhagen city centre is, again, it's only 15 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
So traveling around Copenhagen, I don't think is a problem, which is why I haven't spent too much time figuring it out yet.
Right. So it sounds like when you guys get back in, you could probably just head to the airport, drop your bags off there. I'm sure they have some place where you can drop your bags off there and then just go explore around Copenhagen that day, maybe.
I think so. Well, to be honest, the current plan is we're staying in a hotel the night before the cruise. Right. We're going to talk to those guys and say to them, when we get back in a week's time, would you mind if we just dropped our luggage off with you?
Yeah. And
then pick it up. And I'm pretty sure they'll be fine with that.
Okay, so let's talk about the cruise itself then. What do you kind of some of your overall plans and what you're hoping to do when you sail with the Magic? So how about let's start with just embarkation day.
Okay, so embarkation, as I'm sure people will know, you have to do online check-in in advance, and for us that opened up 90 days in advance of the cruise, so that was just last week, and we've already booked our check-in slot, and we prefer an early check-in, so we've picked the 11:30 up till midday slot, and the idea behind that is just to get on board early, nice and relaxed. We'll probably shoot up to Cabanas and have some lunch up there, and then probably just sit in the promenade lounge, watch the world go by, watch people come on board, and it just I think it just gives time to relax, get unpacked. We'll probably go up onto the top deck for the launch party, which is normally around, I think, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on that first afternoon, and then just in a nice chilled way watch the ship sail out of Copenhagen. So that's embarkation day.
Sounds amazing. And you guys booked something new this time, I guess, that I didn't know about.
No, so we were having a look on the website the other day, and we spotted that Disney have reintroduced, I think, character breakfasts. So if I've understood correctly, it's something Disney did a few years ago. And obviously character breakfast is something that exists in Disney hotels. If you go to Disney World, and I guess Disneyland, it happens as well. But when we went on our cruise to Norway last year, there wasn't the option of having a character breakfast. So we spotted it, thought that sounds like something that's fun. So on our first morning, which is a full day at sea, that first day as it is on many Disney cruises, we're having a character breakfast. There's no additional charge for that. It's just something that you book up, and that should be a lot of fun.
Did they have a couple different slots? I mean, different
Oh
time
yeah,
slots?
There were lots of slots, and we picked it because that's a full day at sea. So there's no pressure that day. There's no excursions to get ready for. So we can just take our time doing that.
Yeah, and we'll go over your itinerary here in just a second. But looking at the itinerary, I really love the way they do that, where you get on the ship the first day, and the second day you've got a day at sea, rather than jumping right into a port, because kind of gives you that day to relax, kind of get your feet out. I mean, start kind of getting in that vacation mode a little bit more, and then you start hitting your ports after that. And then at the end, it kind of does the same thing, where you guys have a day at sea before you pull back into Copenhagen, which I really like that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll be different for us this time because it's not our first Disney cruise, so we know our way around. We kind of understand the structure of what's happening. But as we talked about in the first podcast we did, there are so many activities that Disney put on that there'll be plenty of things to do on both of those full days at sea. Quizzes to get involved in, game shows, just so many things going on that there's never a chance to get bored.
Definitely. Is there anything that you guys are looking forward to doing again, or something that you've talked about that's like, wow, I can't wait till we get back on the ship to do that again?
Well, I'm sure our 7-year-old will be heading straight for the talent competition and playing a bit of piano as he did last time. And we're the sort of family that tends to get involved in stuff, so we'll find out what's going on and go and try and make fools of ourselves in some way or other.
Well, James definitely didn't make a fool of himself. He was amazing on the piano, so I got a chance to see that.
The making a fool of yourself is generally left to me.
I got to see that as well. Did I ever send you the picture when you had the? I think it was the pirate night.
I can't. There certainly are pictures of me with a bucket on my head and just looking very, very foolish.
But a good time, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, no, it was great fun.
Awesome. Fun. So, okay, let's jump into it. So, the first day's at sea, and then your first port of call is going to be Tallinn, Estonia. Talk to me about what you guys are thinking about there.
Okay, so yeah, we arrive in Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, on the Tuesday, and we don't arrive until mid-morning. Actually, this cruise isn't one of those cruises where when you wake up you're always in a port, and where the ship always leaves at kind of 5 o'clock. The timings are a bit more variable, so we'll kind of talk about that as we go through. So I've never been to Tallinn before. We haven't been to Estonia, so very much looking forward to it. And I think actually where the Disney Magic pulls up is pretty close to the city centre, and I think you can walk in if you want to. I think it's maybe a 20-minute walk into Tallinn. So I think you can do that if you want to. But we've chosen to take an official Disney tour. We've picked the Disney Highlights tour, which if anybody wants to look it up on Disney Cruise website is TA11. And from the research I've done, Tallinn's a very old city. It dates back over 1,000 years. It's one of the best preserved medieval cities in Europe, and indeed it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So the tour we've picked takes 4 to 4.5 hours. It's partly on a bus, it's part walking tour, and it takes in the Old Town area, it takes in a 16th century convent, a 13th century cathedral, and from what I've read, I think we then have to walk up quite a big hill to see the Toompea Castle. I've no idea if I pronounced that right, but the Toompea Castle, which I think is where the Estonian Parliament sits. So it's kind of the Estonian Parliament building, and something called the Tall Herman Tower. The Tall Herman Tower. It's a tower, I guess. It's tall. It's named after a guy called Herman. So that's the tour we've picked. 4 to 4.5 hours for us is quite a nice length. And it sounds like it should be pretty interesting, pretty varied, fun, and somewhat tiring as well.
And gets you back to the ship in time to relax a little bit before you do dinner. So and see the downtown a little bit as well. So
exactly,
sounds like a fun day. So from there, the next port you move into is St. Petersburg, Russia, and this is a place I really want to go see.
Yes, I think it's a fascinating city. So I have been there once before. But when I went, it was 1985. I was 17 years old. Russia was still the Soviet Union. So it was still under communist rule, and it wasn't even St. Petersburg. It was then known as Leningrad. So long time ago, a very different city then, I think. But I still remember very vividly visiting the Hermitage Museum. We even then took the time to see the Kirov Ballet Company. So something that's still, after all these years, very vivid and very, very clear in my memory. So thoroughly looking forward to going back. We have one long day in St. Petersburg on this Disney cruise. We dock just after 8 a.m. and then the Magic doesn't sail again until 11:30 p.m. that evening. So there are lots and lots of opportunities to take tours. And in fact, it's very possible to do a tour during the day and then to do a second tour in the evening, taking in the ballet, or Disney also offer some concert opportunities in the evening as well. Wow. So there's a lot to do. In fact, lots of cruise lines spend 2 days in St. Petersburg because there's just so much that you could take in while you were there. For adults, I think the main attractions are probably the world-famous Hermitage Museum, very well known. It has over 3 million items on display, and you could easily just spend a whole day walking around the Hermitage Museum if you wanted to. There's also the Catherine Palace, which was the summer residence of the Russian Tsars. There's the Peterhof Palace and Gardens, which was laid out in the 18th century under the orders of Peter the Great. But most of those tours are long tours. There's a lot of 9.5 hour tours that you can take on the Disney excursion list. And with a 7-year-old in tow with us, that's not really our thing. That's too long. That's too long for us. And maybe when the kids are older, or maybe just Caroline and myself, we may go back to St. Petersburg one day and take in some of those other things. But we've chosen not to do those big long tours this time.
I totally understand that. Yeah, it'd be tough with the little ones in tow to keep their attention going for 9 hours like that.
So the tour we have chosen is SP05, which is called the Majestic Spilled Blood Cathedral and Boat Ride, which really fired my imagination. That conjures up all sorts of thoughts.
Oh, I bet the Spilled Blood Cathedral. Well, tell us a little bit about that one.
Well, I'll explain. So just a little aside before I talk about that tour. I think people talk a lot about whether you should book official Disney excursions or whether you should do some research and go with a local company. And our take on it is, I'm sure you can save money if you search around and find a local tour company. But for us, it tends to be just easier to book with Disney. When we've done Disney excursions, they've been good. We haven't had a disappointment so far. And for St. Petersburg specifically, there is a big advantage of going on an official Disney tour because you don't need to organize a visa. And I haven't looked into what you need to do if you had to sort your own visa, but almost certainly that's going to be a hassle. And if you take a local company excursion, you do have to organize a visa. So for us, that's something that's definitely worth avoiding.
Yeah, that could be a big hassle of trying to go through that whole process, and Disney takes care of it for you when you book their tour, right?
Yeah, exactly. So our tour, it's another 4 to 4.5 hour tour. It sails along the canals and rivers of St. Petersburg and passes by many of the main sites, including the Yusupov Palace, which is where the monk Rasputin was murdered. It passes by the Summer Gardens. It passes by the Peter and Paul Fortress. And it finishes up for a tour of the Church on the Saviour of Spilled Blood, which is its official name. It really is called the Church on the Saviour of Spilled Blood.
And how did it get that name, I guess?
So it's called that because it's built on the site where Emperor Alexander II was assassinated in 1881. That's where it takes its name from.
Wow.
So the church was completed in 1907. And I guess people will have seen pictures of some cathedrals and churches in Russia. And some of the famous ones, and including this one, has multicolored onion-shaped domes. It looks a little bit like St. Basil's in Moscow, which I guess many people will have seen pictures of. But it also has over 75,000 square feet of mosaics inside it, which are apparently very beautiful and incredible to see. So that should be a good tour.
Yeah, I like the idea of the boat ride too. That would be kind of amazing to see that as well.
I think so. We're we're hoping that's going to be quite a relaxing day. That's the idea. I don't think there's too much walking on that one.
Well, perfect. So that's your day in St. Petersburg, and from there you're on to Helsinki, which is in Finland, I believe.
Yep, so the next day we're off to Helsinki, which is the capital of Finland. It is a city I visited before, but I wouldn't say it's a city I know. I kind of just passed through it on the way to somewhere else. And the Helsinki day is quite a short day. So we don't arrive in Helsinki until just before midday, and we leave again at 5:30 p.m. So a pretty short day in Helsinki. So the tour we've booked is HE13, which is called Helsinki and Old Town Porvoo, or Porvo. My Finnish isn't great, so it could be either of those things, or indeed something completely different.
Definitely.
So it's quite a long tour. It's 5.5 to 6 hours, so it'll take up the whole of the time that we're in Helsinki. I guess we'll be pretty tired by the end of it. And from what I've read, we start by taking a bus out to Porvo, which is about 30 miles east of Helsinki, and it's the second oldest town in Finland, dating back to 1346. Apparently it's very beautiful, it's very quaint, cobblestone streets, old wooden buildings, and I guess big photo opportunity there. I guess we'll take a lot of photos while we're in Porvo. When we spent time there, we drive out to something called Kiala Manor House. I know nothing about that really. Apparently it was the home of some very famous artist who, if I'm honest, I've never heard of. Very famous in Finland. But I did read that it has a distillery, a spirit distillery. So some Finnish spirit, which I guess maybe something a bit like vodka. So I'm hoping we can do a bit of sampling of that while we're there. That sounds like something fun. And then we drive back into Helsinki after that and pass by some of the main sites of Helsinki. I think there's an opera house, there's the Olympic Stadium. And then we finish up with a stop at the famous Rock Church, which, as the name suggests, is a church that was excavated directly into solid rock on some hillside. Somewhere just off the centre of Helsinki. It's not an old church, it's a relatively modern church. I think it was finished in 1969, but supposedly it's incredibly beautiful, very atmospheric. So looking forward to that. Should be another great tour, I think.
That would be amazing to see that. I've never even heard of that before, where they excavated it into a rock. What's the place that's in Jordan? Do you remember that from Indiana Jones, by any chance? There, where it's excavated into a rock.
Yes, but no, I don't know what that's called.
I'm totally drawing a blank on the name. Anyways, shoot. It's okay, but that sounds like I kind of like the way they have that. After a long day in St. Petersburg, they get into Helsinki. It's a little bit later in the morning, so it kind of gives you a chance to relax in the morning, get some breakfast, before you jump into your tours that day. So that sounds like
exactly. I guess there'll be a lot of people who are not at breakfast that morning because they'll have done ballet or concert and got to bed pretty late.
Definitely. Okay, so and then you finish up in the port of Stockholm.
Yep, so the final stop is Stockholm, which is the capital of Sweden. And Caroline and I have been to Stockholm before, so it's a city we do actually know reasonably well. So on that day, we've decided not to book an official Disney tour, and we're going to make our own way around the city. So our current plan looks something like this. The Magic Docks in Stockholm, almost in the heart of the city. And you could actually walk to the old town part of the city from where the Magic Docks in about 15 minutes. So it's very, very convenient. And there's also hop-on, hop-off ferry right by where it docks. And that ferry makes a loop around some of the main Stockholm attractions. And obviously, as the name suggests, you can kind of just jump on, jump off as you want. So our current plan is to jump on that ferry and go to, it's probably only a 5-minute ferry ride over across to one of the little islands where the ABBA Museum is. ABBA obviously being the biggest pop band to come out of Sweden. And ABBA were massive in Europe back in the 1970s, early 1980s. I think they're known in the US, aren't they? But they were definitely not as big. Is that right, Steve?
Well, I got a little story for you. So
go on.
What was the song that ABBA won in the European Song Contest back in, was it 76, 77?
It was 74.
74.
So it's called Waterloo.
Yes. So we were actually living in England when that happened. And so our family actually is a pretty big ABBA fan as well. They are big over here. I don't think maybe as big as they are still in Europe. I think it's more nostalgia over here. There's a show called Mamma Mia.
Yeah, there is. In fact, funnily, I've seen Mamma Mia in Vegas. Funnily enough.
Yeah.
So
yeah, so a lot of people love that show, and I think a lot of that's because of the music in it. So there's definitely a nostalgia for them, but you don't necessarily hear their songs on the radio. Do they still play them on the radio quite a bit over there?
I guess not as much, obviously, but yes, it's music that's still around, and Mamma Mia still tours, and you can still go and see Mamma Mia pretty regularly. So I guess the creation of the Mamma Mia musical kind of revived ABBA and revived the songs.
Right.
But our kids, even though they're young and it's old music, love ABBA's music.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so they're really interested to go to that museum. It's something they very much want to do. They want to take the time to look at the costumes, look at the gold discs. I think Benny's piano is there, or Bjorn's piano, one of the guys, their famous piano is there that they wrote a lot of the songs on, lots of other memorabilia. So we're going to spend a couple of hours just looking around that ABBA museum.
Okay.
That's our first stop.
Yeah, I bet you the costumes are pretty crazy from the 70s.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of flares and all of that sort of stuff. Clearly, I'm too young to remember, obviously, as are you.
Of course, exactly.
So after that, we're planning to walk to the Vasa Museum, which is pretty close by. I think it's probably a 10-minute walk. And the Vasa Museum is, I think it's the most visited museum in the whole of Scandinavia, actually. And the Vasa Museum houses a 64-gun Swedish warship called the Vasa. And it's very famous because it sank after just 1,400 yards of her maiden voyage in 1628. So I think it's pretty obvious that some designer didn't quite get the geometry right. So it sank. It sank literally.
It sank on
half an hour into its maiden voyage.
It sank on its own. It's not like somebody attacked it or anything like that.
No, it tipped over and it sank.
Well, I bet you the kids will like that one at least.
Yeah. So it lay in the mud on the bottom of Stockholm Harbour for 333 years before being salvaged in 1961. And it's incredible because it was lying in the mud on the bottom of Stockholm Harbour, very cold water. It's in the mud. There's no oxygen getting to the ship. So it doesn't deteriorate. It doesn't corrode. And when they found it, they discovered that the hull of the ship was largely intact. And that's pretty much unique. So today the ship is fully restored, and it remains the world's only preserved 17th century ship. The world's only preserved 17th century ship. It's something that Caroline and I have seen before, and she's incredibly beautiful.
Is she made of wood, or what is it?
Yeah, she's wooden. Yeah, she's a wooden ship.
Okay.
So obviously they've restored all the bits that did disappear, like the cannons and the rigging, but the hull was intact and is the wood from when she was built in 1628. So incredible, something kind of spooky about it, really. You know, it's one of those places where actually you do get the chill running up your spine and the hairs stand up on your arms. It's an incredible thing. So we're very much looking forward to going back to see that with the kids. So that's the Vasa Museum, and then if we have time, and maybe we will, maybe we won't, we'll hop back on the ferry and just shoot across 10 minutes across to Gamla Stan, which is the old town of Stockholm. We'll wander past the Royal Palace and just walk through the old streets back to the Disney Magic. That's the plan for Stockholm.
Sounds like a pretty easy city to get around because the Magic Park's right downtown. You've got the hop-on, hop-off bus, so kind of a good port for those that want to do a little exploring on their own. Like you guys.
I think it's easy. Yeah, there's a hop-on, hop-off bus, and there's a hop-on, hop-off ferry as well. You can do either. So I think Stockholm's pretty easy to get around, and all of the main sites are all quite close together. So I think I'd probably encourage people to be brave in Stockholm and go do their own thing.
Yeah, and something to throw out, if you haven't traveled to Europe, and I know that some Americans, I guess, are a little nervous about going to all these different towns or different countries as far as being able to speak the language. But from what you found, John, traveling throughout most of Europe, at least from what I've seen, is as long as you're in the major cities, the language barrier doesn't really come into effect too much. Most people in these bigger towns, you can find somebody who speaks English to get into a cafe to get food or whatever else. Is that kind of how you feel?
Yeah, I would say certainly in Copenhagen and Stockholm and Finland and Tallinn, I would expect pretty much everybody you encounter will speak a good level of English. I think Russia, St. Petersburg, perhaps a little less, but everywhere else, certainly I know that when they show films in Sweden, movies in Sweden on the TV channels, those movies are in English. They don't even bother putting them into Swedish. They're in English. So people, the language barrier just won't be a problem at all for anybody at any point.
Well, perfect. Well, it sounds like and then from there, you guys have got the day at sea, which would be nice to kind of relax before you end up back in Copenhagen and make your way back home to England. And we kind of talked about Copenhagen and some of your plans there. Anything else overall that we might have missed, John, that you're thinking about?
No, I think that's our planning. So we've got 80-something days, I think, before we go. And that's as far as we've got in our planning so far.
Well, perfect. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about your cruise to Northern Europe. It's, like I said, a cruise that I think a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do, or they just don't think about it. But, man, it's definitely on our bucket list. And I know Anawake and the boys would love to go up there and do it someday. So I want to wish you and your family the best as you go on this cruise. And if you don't mind, I'd love to have you back on when you get back, sometime afterwards, and kind of talk about how it all went and what your thoughts were about it.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd absolutely love to do that, Steve. It would be an absolute pleasure. And we're really looking forward to it. I mean, you said, didn't you, in one of your other podcasts, or maybe you said to us about having a conversation with the crew, the Disney crew, and what they had to say about the Baltic cruise.
Right.
Tell that story.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. When we were in Norway, I was just on so the Magic, which those of you know, is the Magic is the one that really goes to so many different parts of the world. It doesn't make its way over to Alaska, but it makes it through Europe and all through the Caribbean and whatnot. And I kind of did like a little unofficial survey with the crew members, and I kept asking them, where is your favorite place? If you guys could go back to any place, where would it be? Would it be Norway? Would it be the Caribbean? And hands down, every one of them said they would go back to the Baltic because the ports are just incredible. The cities are incredible. The people are friendly. And that is where they pretty much all would go back to. So there you go. You guys are going to do it.
Yep. So there you go. That's a great note to end on.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, John, for coming on. Wish you and your family safe travels, and look forward to talking to you when you get back.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks. Well, that sounds just like an amazing cruise that John and his family are going to embark upon here in about 2 months. And I really want to reach out to John if you're listening, and thank you once again for coming on. You do such an amazing job with all your pre-planning, and I know myself and all the listeners really appreciate everything that you bring to the show when you come on. And we look forward to talking to John and his family when they get back and hearing all about their cruise up to Northern Europe and the Baltic. And to you, the listeners, I want to say thank you as well. I really appreciate you coming back every time and listening to the shows that we're trying to bring out to you. If you could do me a favor, I would really appreciate it if you enjoy what you're listening to. If you could go to iTunes and rate the show, that helps others find the show and helps me get the word out a little bit better for new listeners to come and kind of enjoy what you guys are listening to as well. And as always, if there is somebody out there that would like to come on, as you can tell, John and I had a good time just sitting back talking about his upcoming trip. If you'd like to come on and talk about your trip that you've recently been on, or one that you are planning, you can reach out to me always at DCL Podcast on Twitter. Once again, that's at DCL Podcast on Twitter, or also on Facebook, just under DCL Podcast. So once again, thanks for joining us, and I look forward to bringing you another show soon. And if you are going to be traveling sometime over spring break, or as we move on into the spring, I wish you and your families safe travels and fair winds as you head out on your next adventure. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon on the DCL Podcast.